Hello, and thank you for joining me today as we begin our discussion on the skeletal system and we look at what makes up our skeletal system. So, today we're going to talk about the types of bones. There are 5 different types, and we're going to talk about parts of what are called long bones. So, you'll be able to label the different parts of a long bone. So, for objectives, things we're going to do, you're going to be able to give examples of the 5 types of bones. You'll be able to explain how compact and spongy bone are different. There are 8 parts to a long bone. You'll be able to label those parts. You'll be able to tell me the difference between yellow bone marrow and red bone marrow. And lastly, you'll be able to tell me where we can find that yellow and red marrow in our bodies. So for starters, your skeletal system is divided into 2 main parts. We have what's called the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. Your axial skeleton is composed of your head, trunk, spine, and sacrum. That's in green over here on the diagram. Your appendicular skeleton is all of your extremities, everything else, essentially. So your arms, your legs, most of your pelvis outside of your sacrum, and your pectoral girdle is also there. Within this, we have different kinds of bones, and there are 5 of those bones. We have long bones, we have short bones, we have flat bones, we have irregular bones, and we have sesamoid bones. So long bones would be like your arms and legs. So your forearms, your upper arms, and your legs as well. Tibia, fibula, and femur. Your short bones are cube-like. These are found in your ankles and wrists. So here we have a whole bunch of bones in your wrists. Those are called carpals. Bones in your ankles, these are called tarsals. Those are short bones. Flat bones are bones that are flat, look kind of like a plate. So the bones of your skull are great examples of flat bones up here. Irregular bones are bones that have different shapes, odd shapes that we can't really put as the other ones. And so bones of your spine, your vertebrae, are irregular in shape. Bones of your face don't really fit one of the other classifications either. And then the last one is called sesamoid. This is when you have a bone inside a tendon. The only place we see that in our bodies are your patella, which is the bone inside your patellar tendon. So your kneecap inside your patellar tendon. With long bones, we have different parts, which we're going to talk about. So we have one is called the epiphysis. These are the ends of your long bones. So this is an epiphysis, and this is an epiphysis. Between those two, this is where your joints are found. So for example, this is your hip joint, this would be your knee joint. So that joints are located at your epiphyses. They are coated in articular cartilage, which provides cushion for that joint. In between your 2 epiphyses, you have what's called a diaphysis. So dia means between. So think of a diameter as between, or the distance across a circle. So there's 1 point, 2 points, diameters in between, diaphysis is in between. So this is the shaft of your long bone is called your diaphysis. Surrounding your bones, we have what's called a periosteum. So para means around, and osteum refers to bones. So this is your covering that surrounds or goes around your bone. This is found around the entire long bone, excluding the articular cartilage on the epiphyseal end. So the articular cartilage here and here is an extension. It's not your periosteum. It doesn't include that. It runs in line, continues to ligaments and tendons. This is how we get shin splints as part of this periosteum. So you're seeing here it gets pulled off. That's where you get shin splints at. A couple other parts, some different terminologies. We have a bony process. So if you have a process, that is a location for ligament and tendon attachment. We're going to look at a number of those as we go through the bones of the body. So a ligament connects 2 bones. A tendon connects muscle to bone, but those connect typically at processes. Grooves and openings are passageways that allow nerves and blood vessels to pass through, and a depression is a large groove where bones can articulate or tissues can fit. So we call that a depression. We'll look at that as well. Back to your parts of a long bone. So we have your epiphyses. On either side, we have a diaphysis in the middle, surrounded by your periosteum. inside of that, you have what's called compact bone, which is what this is all made of. This is the wall of your diaphysis here is made of what's known as compact bone, which is very tough, provides a lot of structure and support. It's a continuous bone matrix with no gaps. It's thick and solid. It's called compact bone. The heads, the ends, the epiphyses of your long bones have compact bone on the outside here, but then in the middle you see this branching, spongy looking substance. This is known as spongy bone. Oddly enough, found in the epiphysis, it's a thin layer, so thin layer compact bone out here. This is all spongy bone. These branches that you see, these are known as trabeculae. So trabeculae are found in the epiphysis of a long bone, epiphyses of long bones, and they are the branches. The reason you have spongy bone is to reduce the weight of a bone. So if this entire thing was compact bone, your bones would be very heavy. But because we can make the middle spongy bone, you can reduce the weight, which makes it easier to move. And so we're giving up, we're looking at the trade-off between strength and compression. And so if the outside is strong, the inside can be a little more airy, a little more flexible, and reduce some of that weight. Within the diaphysis, we have a passageway known as, so that's in the epiphysis is your spongy bone. Within the diaphysis, we have this passageway known as the medullary cavity. And this is a passageway for bone marrow, nerves, blood vessels, all of that. And so this is what passes through the middle of a long bone. It contains bone-forming cells, which are known as osteoblasts, and this is coated by your endosteum, which is the inner lining of your long bone. Your medullary cavity, again, is filled with marrow. There are two types of bone marrow. There is yellow marrow and there is red marrow. Yellow marrow is known to store fat. So if you think back to our integumentary system unit, when we talked about the hypodermis and we talked about it contains fat cells, there was a bunch of yellow in that hypodermis. Those are fat cells, so the yellow marrow is storing fat. Red marrow, we think of blood a lot of times, so red marrow produces blood cells. Yellow marrow, fat storage is found in long bones, so places like your femur, your humerus, your tibia, all of those store fat. Your red marrow is produced in a lot of your flat and irregular bones. And so bones of your skull, bones of your pelvis are great producers of red blood cells. And this is a look, so we've talked, the epiphysis is the top piece on either end, the diaphysis is in the middle. It's surrounded by compact bones. The surrounding is called the periosteum. Within this you have the medullary cavity, which contains bone marrow, nerves, and blood vessels. You have spongy bone on the end, which has those branches called trabeculae. Remember, this is yellow marrow here because it's a long bone. Yellow marrow stores fat. The red marrow, which is found in like your pelvis, would produce red blood cells. So these are the 8 parts. You will need to be able to identify these parts. On the ends is your articular cartilage, the only one I didn't mention on the other one. So make sure you can label those parts of a long bone. Here's your review questions. There are 5 types of bones. Give me the 5 types and give me an example of each. How are compact and spongy bone different? Why do we need both of them? What's the importance? Name the 8 parts, and how are red and yellow marrow different? Make sure you can do that. If you have questions, please stop and see me. I'd be happy to talk through them with you. Otherwise, I look forward to continuing this unit, and I will see you next time.